My goal is to imitate every NPC in the game by copying their gear, including their armor, rings, and weapons. But imitation alone isn't enough. I want to replace them so that it's as if they never existed in the first place. This means, in addition to copying their gear, I must kill every NPC who I intend to impersonate. Every NPC will be used to defeat one boss. After I beat a boss as an NPC, that NPC cannot be used against any more boss fights in the playthrough. However, I can continue to use their gear as well as anything else I have on me during the in-between stages while I'm collecting gear for my next impersonation. The only thing I am allowed to use regardless of who I am impersonating is the Cling Ring when in soul form. Just like last time, I will only be using the gear of friendly NPCs, or at least NPCs who I can talk to at some point. Black Phantoms and other hostile NPCs, like Miralda, will not be imitated. Although not being Miralda was just because I didn't have enough bosses. I probably would have made an exception for her otherwise. Black Phantom versions of named NPCs, however, must be defeated before we can take their identity. For example, Selen Vinland has a physical body and pure white world tendency, and we can talk to her, but only drops her weapon as a Black Phantom in pure black tendency. Regardless, we must kill her in both her forms before we can imitate her for a boss fight. In Demon Souls, the physical body part of the rules is more complicated because some NPCs will appear in soul form, such as the Crestfallen Warrior in the Nexus. Since this is still a permanent and killable form, unlike summonable phantoms in Dark Souls, we'll treat him the same as the NPCs in body form since the differences between the two are only visual. Just as a warning, I always allow duping in my runs if it is something that I can farm legitimately at the point I'm at, because it changes absolutely nothing about the run and saves a lot of time. For example, I can dupe upgrade materials once I have reached a point where they are dropped by enemies or purchasable from merchants, and I can dupe souls to reach stat requirements for weapons so I don't have to farm for 2 hours. I won't use it to get all my stats to 99 right after the first boss or anything like that, but even if I did, it wouldn't matter in this case because guess what? We are actually doing this run in New Game Plus because certain NPCs have weapons that you can only make with endgame items. And I will tell you right now, in Demon Souls, New Game Plus is brutal, and I was not prepared for it at all. I'm using my Soul Level 1 save from a few months ago since that one is a perfect character to start with. Although the character was Melina, and I'm not sure what that has to do with imitating NPCs. I guess the Frenzied Flame ending really took a toll on her. One more thing before we start is that I am using a save editor I found to freely switch my character between female and male so that I can wear all armor sets on the same save file. So sometimes Melina will randomly switch to a different body. I guess it runs in the family. Anyways, I'll put the link to that in the description so you can download it from the uploader's video. And now, let's begin the run. Our options are limited while the Archstones are still sealed. Until we beat the first boss, the only NPC who we can get all the gear of is the Crestfallen Warrior. He wears basic equipment that we can purchase in 1-1 from the Dregling Merchant. But this small journey will not be easy in New Game Plus. Even the weakest attacks for most enemies will be enough to kill us. However, we can use the buckler our class starts with to block. Even if it doesn't fully protect us against physical damage, it will at least prevent those attacks from being fatal. We'll buy what we can afford for now, and then continue on until we reach the spot where Ostrava is stranded. This time, I'm not just pushing him off to be mean, I actually can't help him, so he needs to stop being a coward and fight some of these Dreglings. He's gonna be my bodyguard for this last section, especially when we have to get past tougher enemies like the Blue-Eyed Knights. The enemies will chase us a long way, which works out because we can lure them to where Ostrava loops around and get him to kill them for us. Unfortunately, the enemies are too tanky for the boulders to kill them all. Depending on your luck, at least 3 of them can survive this. Before I go past that corridor, I'm going back to the merchant while the path is clear so I can buy the plate set. Once I made my way back to the bridge, I was pleasantly surprised to see that the fire will still kill the enemies as usual. It wasn't easy to get here, but once I opened the gate to the Phalanx, I didn't even care about the shortcut and instead used a shard of Archstone I had gotten from the Dragon's Nest to return to the Nexus to buy more grass. Now the time has finally come to take out our first target, the Crestfallen Warrior. Although the wiki says he uses a broadsword, in-game he appears to be using the longsword. As you can see, our weapons are identical, so in this case, I will override what the wiki says and use my own eyes. I don't know why I tried to challenge him head-on in the first place. Obviously I can't survive a hit from him, and even if I parry him, the damage isn't high enough to justify the risk. So we'll do this the easy way and take him up top so we can push him to his death. Now that he's dead, we just need one final touch to complete our outfit, the Soldier's Shield. This shield is just for show, because the royalty class lacks the strength to wield it in one hand, so blocking with it won't be very helpful. The Phalanx is one of those strange bosses that is really easy on a normal run, but can become very difficult even with light restrictions. It wouldn't have been that difficult this time if it weren't for the fact that we are in New Game Plus with our base stats. In this run, I once again faced the same problems I faced in other runs, but combined into one awful experience. I have the low damage from that time I fought them with my fists, and they have the high damage just like they did in the Pure Black run. To make things even worse, I'm heavy rolling in this armor, so what little stamina I have will regenerate very slowly. Just like the other runs I mentioned, my only choice is to kill the hoplites first, since it's impossible for me to do enough damage to the main body without getting overwhelmed by spears. Besides, if I do that, she'll just heal it all back. So what I ended up doing was using the fight as a farming spot for upgrade materials, and since I had no intention of actually killing the boss during these encounters, I allowed myself to use turpentine to kill the hoplites quicker. They have a decent chance of dropping hardstone shards, which we can use to upgrade the longsword to +3. After doing that, it was much easier for me to manage the hoplite population, and I finally felt like I was making a dent in their numbers. I still had to stay patient and lure them out in small groups, but even with this passive method, I was able to complete the fight in under 20 minutes. First and foremost, we are putting everything into Vitality. After all, the next NPC we are going to impersonate uses gear that we can only find in the Valley of Defilement. This NPC doesn't have a name, he is simply called the Disciple of God. He's the guy in the Nexus that sells you miracles before you rescue Urbane. His weapons are found early on in 5-1, but only the Filthy Woman sells his chainmail, and you have to fight through a lot of enemies to get to her. For the time being, I decided to return to Stonefang Tunnel to farm a few souls off of the Fat Official. These are probably the easiest enemies to farm for souls right now, and they also drop many types of healing grass, which we will need a lot of. I considered quitting out to save my body form, but then I realized that world tendency doesn't matter too much because everything is one-shotting me anyway. If anything, it's better to move it towards black so we get more souls and better drops. I do have access to magic again, so I at least can pick off most of the enemies with Soul Arrow. However, the dogs in this game are very hard for a weak character due to poise not being a thing. Boletaria is probably a better early game farm because the hoplites at the beginning of 1-2 have a chance of dropping large hardstone shards, which we need to upgrade our Morning Star. We can also use the Red-Eyed Knight to farm for souls and moongrass, since we can make him fall off the stairs. Once I get at least one large hardstone shard, I can go back to the Nexus and dupe them so we don't have to spend the rest of the day farming for them. You can use the save editor to spawn in items, but right now it's pretty glitchy, so I avoided using it when I didn't have to. Now I think we should go and try the Valley of Defilement again so we can buy the rest of the chainmail set. I played it safe and used Soul Arrow to snipe all the depraved ones on the level above the Filthy Woman. And after killing all the enemies down here and picking up every soul item I could, I had enough to buy the whole set. But of course, all clerics have to have at least one miracle in their repertoire, so we also buy heal from our target before continuing our massacre. I get the feeling he hated his job anyway, because he seems pretty chill about the prospect of a shapeshifter coming in to replace him. The archers outside the arena were more than happy to remind me that they would actually be a threat this time around instead of just a nuisance. I have to pay attention to the other ones while I try to kill one, because if two of them shoot me at the same time, I'm dead. Even a +6 Morning Star is not enough to kill them in one hit. It takes at least 3 hits to kill an archer, and even if I tried not to push them too far, each one ended up falling down and crowding around the Tower Knight's feet like the annoying little ants they are. After I killed about 6 archers, I could finally get on with the Tower Knight fight, which went on for almost 15 minutes with how little damage I was doing. I can't complain though, it was still an easy fight, and I get 50k souls for it. That's a lot of levels. Anyways, let's go down the list and prepare to assassinate our next target. Melina has reverted to her original form once more, so she can properly impersonate the nameless female follower of Saint Urbane, also known as the Worshipper of God. She's only slightly harder to kill than her colleague from earlier, but only because she at least tries to fight back, no matter how useless it is. I do like her choice of weapon though. The pickaxe is one of my favorite weapons in this game, and she isn't even putting it to good use. 500 souls is a very small price to pay to get it slightly earlier in the level. Once we get it upgraded, it will be perfect for this level. The scale miners are weak to pierce damage, just like the area bosses, so this helped a lot with getting through the narrow tunnels where they block you off. I got a little overconfident and forgot that I was in pure black and had black phantoms in my world already. Unfortunately, even though poise doesn't exist, hyper armor is still a thing. As long as we attack first, we should be okay. I also pushed him into the lava just for good measure. The other enemies that gave me trouble were actually the flame lizards. I didn't initially recognize them as the threat they were, and before I knew it, I was surrounded. Once I got past this section, I went back to kill the primeval demon to reset the world tendency to neutral, so the armor spider isn't as unforgiving as everything else has been. Of course, you have to actually leave and reload the level for the change to take effect. I was doing pretty well until the end when I got hit once. The damage on the spider's end is probably not going to change much, but I was doing better damage, so it was still worth it to get back to neutral tendency. As for the fire, there's a little spot here in the back where you can camp while you wait for her to finish with the fire. I like to do this until the fire effect completely fades because it always obscures her next attack, and as you saw earlier, if I guess wrong, I die. Aside from her being tougher than usual, it was the same simple fight as always, and with those souls, we can get our vitality to 30. Our next target is not a cleric this time, but a mage, Freke's Apprentice. With nothing else but his catalyst to defend himself, he dies without time to cast his single spell. While he won't be the one to challenge the Fool's Idol, I would like to clear out this area so we can free Sage Freke and pick up some NPC gear for later. The Ring of Magical Sharpness would be very useful, but if he doesn't wear it, I guess I won't either. No wonder he was still an apprentice. Clearing out this area is very beneficial for a mage because the Mind Flayers have a high chance of dropping both kinds of spice. And if that still isn't enough, the Royal Mistress sells them at a cheap price if we have some souls left over after stocking up on full moon grass. Once we've shut down the contraption and killed the guy at the end of the tower, we'll head out for now and free Sage Freke on our way back to the Archstone. I'm not feeling very confident about fighting the Flame Lurker. Even if he is weak to magic, he can be scary on base game difficulty. Nothing in New Game Plus has been particularly painless so far, and he certainly won't be an exception, so we need to prepare accordingly and work on our magic power. One thing I can use my magic for is the Red Dragon in 1-2. It will be a very tedious process, but at least it's easy to do. After I kill it, I have enough souls to get magic over 20. I wasn't planning on killing Patches this early. I was actually trying to push him away from the bear bug since the wiki said he won't survive the explosion in New Game Plus, but I ended up aggroing him in the process. I should have just headbutted him instead of hitting him with my catalyst, but I assumed it was damage based and not hit based. Also, I think Patches has a shorter temper than most NPCs. So I went to kill him with the bear bug regardless, but he had his shield up so he survived. But since he loves to roll through my spells so much, I brought him to the lowest part of the level and got him to roll into the lava pit. This is a more fitting end for him anyways. After using the souls I got from clearing the level, as well as some night farming sessions, my magic was now at 24, which I can only hope will make a significant difference against the Flame Lurker. I can't say I'm not disappointed with that damage, I just know it could be a lot worse. On the bright side, Soul Arrow is very cheap, and I have as much spice as a mage could ever need. The only problem is, as I feared, I can't really take a hit from him. Some attacks I can survive, but he has several that will one-shot me. If I get myself backed into a corner while I'm trying to maintain a good distance to cast, his AoEs will be very hard to get out of. And once he powers up, all it takes is a single swipe to kill us. This is still very doable, but since this fight is essentially a spam fest with magic, I might as well get a few more levels so it doesn't take as long. I went back to World 3 to farm souls from the Mind Flayers. That way, I can replenish my stock of spices as well. Once I was done, my magic stat was up to 28. It didn't end up making much of a difference at all, as you can see. The damage boost I got from that is very modest. Even though I was still struggling with this, I didn't want to go into body form and risk lowering the world tendency, because I honestly wasn't sure if even the vitality I had would be enough to survive certain attacks. As always, the jankiness will win in the end if you fight him long enough. This time, he got himself stuck in the cheese spot and refused to leave it despite the fact that I was nowhere near it. And I, being an opportunist, wasn't about to squander this chance to beat him either. I took a break from the offensive stats and chose to get some more vitality before I work on my next NPC outfit. Since we killed him already and have most of his gear, why not just be Patches next? Only, something's still off. Hang on a second. Much better. As soon as I saw that you could change your hair in the save editor, I knew it would be morally incorrect to give Patches hair when there's another option. The only downside to using the save editor is that it introduces a few other glitches, like items randomly changing durability and weight. For now, the solution is to unequip and re-equip all your items. But it does what it needs to do, so it's not a big deal for me. We've got the look. All we need now is the great shield and spear combo Patches is known for. He does use a bow in this game, but I'm so used to him being a shield poker that I didn't really use it that much. For a shield, he has the Adjudicator's shield, which we can't use, but the health regen still works, so it's not completely useless. Once we get the short spear from the Dregling, we're all set to face the Fool's Idol. Even though I can't properly use the shield, blocking is still a good option against her since she attacks slowly enough to let us recover after our guard is broken. I did die a few times to this, to the same trap interestingly, but once I stopped being greedy and instead paid more attention to the traps, she wasn't so bad. I upgraded the spear to +6 before the boss fight, however, I was also fiddling around with the save editor somewhere in between and messed something up. For some reason, the weapon was still displaying the +6 upgrade level, even though it had been reset to its base upgrade level. I only noticed because my damage seemed suspiciously low for a +6 weapon against weak enemies like the Worshippers. I noticed this in the fight as well, but figured that she must have just gotten buffed up a lot for New Game Plus. Once again, you have to unequip and re-equip your weapon to fix this. From here on out, I started being more careful with the save editor, especially since I will also be using it to change world tendency to get certain items. The good thing about using the save editor to do that is we can reset it right back to where it was when we're finished. After freeing Rydell, we don't need to kill him. He will die on his own. Seriously, do not kill him. I learned this the hard way on another playthrough. You won't get the items if you do that. One of these cells has a copy of the Parrying Dagger, which we're gonna need to impersonate the final member of the cleric crew. Saint Urbain's male follower, also known as the Acolyte of God. He's definitely the weakest of the bunch, wearing the lightest armor and using a sidearm as his main weapon, but even he serves a purpose for dealing with gimmick bosses that would otherwise be a waste of an identity. Even though we don't meet the dex requirement for the Parrying Dagger, we're gonna go to the Dragon God anyway since it shouldn't have an impact on how fast the debris gets broken. I got a little ahead of myself here and didn't realize his fire would reach this far. Oh well, soul form is better for stealth anyways. I did upgrade my dex before coming back. If anything, it will be useful for taking off his final chunk of health at the end. Because I know myself better than anyone else, I preemptively revived to body form just in case I get caught in his lingering AoE. Yeah, that would have killed me in soul form. We don't get the message about the fog because it's technically already open in New Game Plus, but I still wanted to defeat an archdemon before going there since it's basically a fresh character. We've got a couple things to do before we fight another boss. First, I want to go back to 3-2 to free Yurt, kill him, and grab his armor for later. While I was here, I went ahead and finished the level by breaking the second chain to drop the egg sac. We'll get a few quick levels before we return to World 3, This time, we'll be changing the world tendency to pure black so we can defeat Black Phantom Rydell. Lord Rydell seems like a good candidate for beating the Leechmonger to open up the rest of World 5. I would use Yurt, but the only other way to get the Shotel without going to 5-2 would be to farm it from skeletons. And after the Halberd incident, I am never farming for a weapon again, besides the iron knuckles we need for Lord Rydell. But anyways, what I really want is the phosphorescent pole, but he never gives it up without a fight. He's already quite difficult for a Demon Souls NPC, and New Game Plus is just rubbing salt in the wound. Despite what I said about farming, I did briefly give up on him and try to get the Shotel, but then I realized I should set the world to pure black. But then I forgot that Satsuki chases you the moment you spawn in, so I tried to run from him, only to run into another Black Phantom, after which all three of us took the plunge together. But then I had another idea. I could do the same to Lord Rydell. The Black Phantoms are so aggressive that they chase you far longer than regular enemies. All we need to do is find somewhere for him to fall. Once he dies, we simply quit out and return to his spawn point to collect the loot. I'm going to level endurance a bit in hopes that I'll be able to roll normally with the full Gloom set. For now, we should be fine since Rydell wears light armor, even if we have to equip the Iron Knuckles as well. It may have been a waste of a colorless Demon Soul, but I upgraded the pole once before coming out here, just to get a slight boost to its scaling, but it doesn't really make a difference yet. I was expecting it to do a lot more damage against the Leechmonger, even if it is New Game Plus. I never considered the Leechmonger a particularly tanky boss. Normally, the healing isn't much of an issue since most builds do enough damage to cancel it out. Surprisingly, I didn't die to this, even though it was a very sloppy fight. I ended up burning through all my healing items and had to resort to the Crescent Moon Grass that wasn't even in my hotbar. Somehow, I didn't lose my patience during all this, and managed to tough it out even after it healed several times. By now, I think I'm probably ready to venture into 1-3. After all, our choices for NPC impersonations are starting to thin out and 2 of them can be found here. I feel a lot safer in here with a polearm since I can use it to deter tougher enemies like the dogs, in theory. But it's not the dogs that killed me. My own greed led me into a corner on my futile quest for infinite wealth, symbolized by the crystal lizard that I could only ever come close to killing, but never attain. Sadly, that's just how it is in this game. If you miss your chances, that crystal lizard is gone forever. We need to be extra careful going through this level due to all the archers in the vicinity. There are so many times where I forget about one and it comes out of nowhere while I'm fighting something else. Luckily, we can take advantage of the phosphorescent pole's best feature, which is its quick MP recovery. Although at +1, it isn't much faster than the Fragrant Ring. Now that we're this deep in the castle, we can start our fat official hunt. First, we need to kill the one that drops the Iron Ring of Keys. Then, we use that key to access the dungeon where Biorr is imprisoned, kill the guard, and get a bloody iron key, which we can use to unlock the isolated tower at the beginning of the level. Before that, we'd better loop back around and kill the gatekeeper for his hat, otherwise we won't be able to free Yuria. With this, we've freed every NPC in the level and can finally get back to impersonating. Scirvir's going to have the same fate as all the other special NPCs, in both pure white and pure black. The pure black version drops his talisman, and the pure white version drops a Ronin's ring, which we can use for a different NPC very soon. Scirvir has a very interesting setup. He specializes in casting his fire magic, but also keeps a short sword and Gary's stiletto for melee. The latter is a gimmick weapon that restores MP by hitting enemies, which might be useful for the section leading up to the Adjudicator. Before we leave, we need to level up quite a bit before we can use any of his spells. After duping some souls, we can meet the faith requirement of 18 to use the Talisman of Beasts. From here, we'll keep upgrading our intelligence until we have 5 memory slots. I didn't mention this, but since we are in New Game Plus, I figured it wouldn't be a big deal to dupe boss souls so that we can make multiple spells from them. This run isn't particularly restrictive either. We just want to ensure that our costumes are accurate. It's just an innocent game of dress-up. While I'm learning everything else, I got Soul Sucker from Yuria. I'm super excited about that one, since it makes our work easier. Scirvir does use a few healing miracles, but I don't think they are super necessary for the build. I'm just going to focus on his offensive magic, which is Fire Spray, Fireball, and Ignite. Ignite is an amazing close range spell, but by close range, I mean really close. You basically need to be touching the enemy for this to connect. The only downside is that certain enemies can interrupt it really easily. But if you can get 1 or 2 casts in, that'll be enough to kill most things you encounter. Our other main spell is Fireball. It's less damaging than Ignite, but much easier to use. Initially, I was going to exclusively use Fireball to kill the Adjudicator from a distance, but after I got sniped by his tongue, I realized it would be easier to approach this with a hybrid method. First, we use our short sword to swing at his wound as usual, which is far less risky since he repeats the same attack. Then, every time he's knocked down, we can spam Ignite to get as much damage in as we can. After a couple times, he should be dead. I have some potentially run-invalidating information. Apparently I never killed this guy. Imagine being that forgettable. But you know who isn't forgettable? Patches. I hate to admit it, but it felt lonely pushing myself down the hole in silence without his usual snickering. With Satsuki already taken care of, now I just need to get his weapons. After we get the Makoto, we can return to the start of the area and get the Uchikatana from a corpse behind the vanguard. Finally, we just need to get his clothes from the depths of the Valley of Defilement. We're going through this place next anyway, so it works out perfectly. I had a funny interaction with a mosquito where I killed it at the same time it started its grab animation. I'm pretty sure this quirk still exists in Elden Ring. It's funny, so part of me is glad it never got fixed. When the shortcut is open, all we have to do is backtrack across the bridge until we see a lone shaman. This particular enemy will drop the shaman set. Lastly, we'll pick up the Shotel, then we can finally challenge the Dirty Colossus. Although Satsuki himself doesn't dual wield, I feel like it's a missed opportunity on his part, so I decided to make him dual wield with the katanas because it's cool. I quickly realized that stacking damage over time effects is not a good idea, so this little phase of mine was short-lived. I did not expect this fight to be as close as it was, but luckily there were a few pieces of scaffolding that he hadn't destroyed yet for me to hide behind and heal. After he disrespected me like that, I had no choice but to style on him for the finisher. Before we challenge the next boss, let's spend the souls we got from the last fight on some extra vitality. To make our Yurt cosplay as accurate as possible, we'll turn our Shotel into a Mercury Shotel. This will reduce the physical damage while adding poison buildup. Since all types of Mercury Stone can be farmed legitimately from man centipedes, we're allowed to dupe it to save us the headache of farming it. Yurt's setup is less than ideal for the man-eaters. His damage is not looking great, so our only hope is that we'll be able to overcome the man-eater's high poison resistance. The real issue starts when the second one spawns in. For some reason, Yurt thinks it's a good idea to wear the Ring of the Accursed when he has no friends. Of course, as the inheritor of his identity, that means I'm forced to wear it too, and I couldn't have picked a worse fight to do so. One of the wikis only claims that NPC enemies have increased aggro range with the ring, so while I can't confirm this is true for bosses as well, it certainly felt like it. To be fair, everything has felt a lot more aggressive in New Game Plus, but with the man-eaters I felt like I couldn't get a chance to attack with both of them chasing me down the whole time. This is also the first time in forever that I've seen them buff themselves. Normally, I don't struggle to do enough damage for the tail cut. After a few attempts, I got a pure Mercury Stone for a +5 Shotel. The difference in damage isn't that significant, but at least it increases our poison buildup as well. I'm not going to continue throwing myself in there in body form either. It may be harder to stay alive, but after I kill the primeval demon, if I keep dying, I'll be stuck fighting them in pure black eventually. This turned out to be a great decision. The mental part of a fight is more important than you think. Without the fear of dying, I felt more confident and became more aggressive than before. I was even able to poison one of the man-eaters, which, on top of its obvious use, is a good visual indicator of which man-eater is which when both of them have tails. For the most part, the magic attack is easy to avoid if you use the brazier. It usually only got me when it had a straight path to chase me. When they have their tails, they will spam this relentlessly, but I learned that I can somehow survive it even in soul form, so it might be better for me to leave their tails on so I can get an extra opening by interrupting them when they attempt to buff. After I killed the first one, I wasn't as worried about it because the fight becomes much easier when you only have to worry about one thing at a time. Weirdly, he started acting passive all of the sudden, which I am okay with because I poisoned him too, so he can take all the time he needs to fly to me. I think I've been looking forward to being Mephistopheles more than anything else in this run, all because of the fact that she's the only NPC who uses the New Game Plus exclusive Soul Sucker spell. As we kill her, we need to make sure we don't get caught in it, otherwise we'll get de-leveled. I noticed after reviewing the footage of the fight that she is using a silver catalyst and not the Talisman of Beasts as stated on the wiki. However, I didn't think about it while playing and was still using the Talisman of Beasts. It's not a huge deal or anything, since Soul Sucker is an insta-kill regardless of what we cast with. We can loot the rest of her equipment off her corpse, then head back to World 3 to test our spell out on the old monk. I know the wiki says this doesn't work on bosses, however, I thought it would be worth trying against the old monk anyway since he is an NPC type enemy. Unfortunately, this seems to be one of the times when I should have listened to the wiki, because it didn't seem to be doing anything. But that could just be me not casting in the right place. The hitbox is very precise, and I need to be really close. At least, that's what I hoped was the case, because I really wanted to kill him with this. Usually, he would interrupt me if I tried to get close, so I hoped that I would be able to trick him into walking into it by casting it as he runs towards me. It did seem to connect once. I can see where the hit registered from the green particles. And after that, I finally decided to give up and admit that the wiki was right. Unless it actually does work and he just rolled through it. Nope, I won't torment myself with this any longer. We're just going to have to kill him the normal way. We could definitely use a little more damage, so I'm going to upgrade our FA with the colorless demon soul we got earlier. The damage of individual stabs isn't that much, but due to the extra stagger we get from the fire, we can keep him stunned for a while and do lots of damage with successive stabs. This also prevents him from instantly parrying our follow-up. Most of the time, he will roll away before he attempts to parry it. As long as we are very careful about his magic and give ourselves time to dodge it, nothing else he has is much of a threat, even in New Game Plus. After this, I decided to treat myself to a little NPC killing spree to scratch the Soul Sucker itch. These are all of the people Mephistopheles ordered to be killed anyway, so in a way, I'm doing exactly what she would have wanted. I'll spend my souls before I go out to assassinate our current target, Selen, Vinland. First, we'll take care of her in body form since that's easier. Then we'll switch to Pure Black, where we can also kill another primeval demon on our way to the island she stands on. I approached her with a thief's ring so she wouldn't notice me, but I felt kinda bad, so I took it off. She looked at me and still did nothing, so at least now I can say I gave her a chance. Although Soul Sucker has been fun, it doesn't fit a brave warrior like Selen Vinland, so our next NPC fight is going to have to be an honorable battle. First, I need to get my dexterity to 24 to wield the blind, and then max out my spell capacity because I'm killing Yuria, my last surviving teacher. After we aggro her, there's no turning back, so I have to make sure I've memorized everything I'm going to need for the rest of the run beforehand. I went back to 1-1 to get that colorless demon soul as well, so our blind can be +2. The next boss fight will give us an opportunity to be 2 NPCs, because Garl Vinland and Maiden Ostrava are separate enemies. Selen Vinland will have to kill her own brother, while Yuria can take care of Ostrava. Garl Vinland would know more than anybody that we aren't really his sister, no matter how eerily similar we may be, and this makes him fight with even more fervor. He's become enraged by his desire for vengeance. To deal with this new threat, we'll need to become stronger. We have 2 items we can trade with the bird in return for a colorless demon soul, the gold mask and a Talisman of God. Once the blind is +4, it now gets an S scaling in dex, but to really see results, we should get our dexterity a bit higher. I think 30 will do. This will also make up for the fact that he's immune to bleed. I learned earlier that for whatever reason, he doesn't parry this sword if I keep his head under the rock, but as soon as I move out into an open space with him, he parries instantly. I haven't mentioned this yet, but the main feature of this sword is that it goes through shields. Naturally, that's going to be very useful against him since he spends most of the fight with his shield up. After he's dead, we'll shed our Selen skin and re-emerge as Yuria the Witch. I had another mishap with the save editor and accidentally unequipped the Ring of Magical Nature after I reverted the world tendency, and that was the only reason I could attune Firestorm, and as far as I know, setting the spell to Memorized with the save editor still doesn't work. I would have to set a spell to Known and still have an NPC alive who is capable of equipping spells. At least Yuria knows Flame Toss, so I still have something to kill Ostrava with. When that's done, I can get one more level, which I choose to put towards magic power. Saint Urbane is the only NPC left in the Nexus who I can impersonate. Once he helps me memorize God's Wrath, I have no further use for him. I accidentally got too close to Boldwin and made him hostile. Apparently you can reset him with the save editor, but that's going too far for me. I think I'm just gonna own up to my mistakes on that one, but first we need to take care of Urbane. He won't cast if we don't get too close, and with the range of this spell, it doesn't really matter where he is, as long as we can see him, it will most likely hit him. Once again, I messed up. I forgot about the damn ring again. Don't worry, we always have a backup plan for situations like this. There are so few bosses in this game that some NPCs were gonna go unused, one of those being Graverobber Blige. As you saw earlier, he is our next target, not Saint Urbane. He sells all of his own equipment to us, completely oblivious to the fact that it will lead to his death. Honestly, I would much rather impersonate him than Urbane. Urbane is a one-trick pony, while Blige has a bit more variety. He uses a falchion and a bow to give us a few more options for dealing with the enemies leading up to the old hero. The bow is good for baiting out the laser ghost so we can run through while it finishes the attack. I don't think we have a reason to use it in an actual fight though, not when the falchion is right there. I died only once this time, which is a little surprising since I consider him strong for Demon Soul standards, but even in New Game Plus, the falchion melts through his health pretty quickly. Sage Freke is one of few people capable of killing the Storm King, and the only one we have left for the job. With 30 magic, Soul Ray can almost one-shot the Manta Rays, and I don't expect the Storm King to be too much stronger than before. Freke does know homing Soul Arrow, but it never wanted to hit anything in this fight, so I felt like it was a waste of MP here. When we're done with the final boss of the area, I'm actually gonna stick around to farm some souls since I can't dupe anymore without the blacksmith. However, I did have some leftover souls that were already duped, so I ate all of those and got as much strength as I could so I could properly wield Biorr's weapons. We can also farm chunks of Hardstone in Stonefang Tunnel. All of the long sword wielding miners should drop it. It should be safe to be in soul form here, so we can just jump off a cliff to respawn at the Archstone and make the farming process faster. I forgot about Ostrava over here. I suppose we might as well kill him too. Why get Biorr when you can Biorr for the Penetrator? We're taking advantage of everything but the crossbow because I hate crossbows in this game. Even with the Ring of Great Strength, we're still fat rolling due to the sheer amount of shit this guy is carrying. I thought using the shield would be a good idea, but they call this guy the Penetrator for a reason. Aside from his unblockable attack, all of his moves will go through your shield to an extent, and picking one with low magic damage negation was not a good move. Aside from that, a great shield isn't very useful if blocking a single hit depletes my entire stamina bar. My stamina already regenerates extremely slowly with the heavy equipment I'm wearing, so I think I would be better off dodging as usual even if I'm fat rolling. Despite the fact that I had just established in my head that I would not be relying on the Great Shield anymore, I still went to upgrade it after I killed this world's primeval demon as if a small increase to stability would do anything. I feel that it's only fitting for old King Doran to challenge old King Alant. He seems like a pushover at first, but he's only testing you. Once you get him angry for real, he stops going easy on you and gets much more aggressive. I struggled to do any damage against him with the greatsword, so I went to Ed and made the Northern Regalia his own weapon, and went to use that against him instead. Normally, he doesn't follow me outside this door, but this time he chased me down when I went out to heal, and he got stuck in a loop where he kept trying to return to his spawn point and refused to attack me. I didn't expect it to be that easy, but I'll take it. Now we just have to get past the final section of the palace, which I still find tricky even on base game difficulty. At last, we've reached the final NPC we must kill before challenging a Lunt, the black phantom that remains of Ostrava. With that, the way to the lift is cleared, so if we need to do the quit out trick, nothing will bother us anymore. The Northern Regalia does not disappoint. As a weapon you can only make in New Game Plus, I would expect it to be good enough to deal with the ridiculously strong enemies you have to face, and it does just that. A Lunt tends to be a good test for how strong your weapon is at the end of the game. Many weapons fall off in this fight even when properly upgraded. But this weapon was practically made for us. It scales with character tendency and gets the most damage at either pure black or pure white. Considering how high his resistances are, I'm surprised we were still doing this much damage to him. This is the only weapon I've gotten to use so far where I really feel like I can hang with the enemies in New Game Plus, damage-wise. After the Demon King has been slain, there's only one NPC we haven't impersonated, and I think you know who that is. I always like to end runs like this by being the heroic figure of the game. Of course, I don't know if that quite describes Ostrava since he always hides behind a corner instead of fighting, but he looks the part with the poster set and all, so I think he's a good fit for this. But more importantly is the fact that he has personal relations with the final boss. I always like to make family fight each other, as you know, but this one shouldn't be surprising. All royal families go through disputes, and seeing what his dear father has become, Ostrava would have wanted us to put him to rest. He merely lacked the willpower to do the deed himself. Though we are nothing but a shape-shifting demon ourselves, our hunger for souls cannot triumph once we have transformed into Ostrava. Indeed, his resolve was so great that it even has an effect on us after his death, and we inherit his will, returning the old one to its slumber, whether we desired this outcome or not. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. This is one of my favorite types of runs to do, and definitely an easy one to try yourself if you want to start a new run. Just don't do it in New Game Plus. As always, if you have a suggestion of your own, feel free to leave a comment. In the meantime, I have lots of videos about Demon Souls and the other Souls games on my channel for you to check out if you're interested. I'll see you in the next one.